it. Let's go already. Yes. There we go. Okay, so welcome to episode 11 of the Mesmerise podcast, and we have Catalysis.
Yeah.
Yes, I did it. I stumbled through it. I feel so embarrassed. We have Calum and Colin. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, good. Well, man. Cheers. How are you getting on?
I'm good. I finally set up my new guitar with an Everchin bridge. Life is easy. It's nice.
Living the dream.
You don't have to tune anything ever.
Except my voice.
Yeah.
Or you have to do warm-ups.
Yeah.
Push-ups. He has to do weights. He has to do all this stuff to keep his body looking fresh. Wiki fresh.
The day when you inevitably just take your top off on stage.
Yeah, you're
when everyone just realises that you're built.
You're hoping for that moment.
I'm really not.
So, while we're starting this, first thing I want to mention, as I'm going to do throughout the podcast a few times, I want to say thank you to our sponsor, Xstream, which is a new streaming service, which is powered by Bandcamp. Woo! How exciting. What it does is it's exactly the same concept as Spotify, Deezer, Apple Music. I don't know why I put Deezer before Apple Music. However, that is the way now, and all other streaming services. However, it pays out more than those services, as it's essentially run by musicians for musicians. The first month has already passed, and we've already gotten a far larger. My band has gotten a larger return from that service than all the other streaming services that we're on combined. So we go back to the podcast with Catalysis. Good. I didn't stumble through it. Awesome source. Let's get to it. So your latest release, Connection Lost, which I happen to have also had a listen to, as one should, when interviewing yourself. And I also want to say thank you to David for bringing them to me, because they sound fucking awesome.
Thanks, man.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it means a lot.
I don't interview bands that I don't like, so yeah.
Good start.
Good arse lickery at the beginning of the podcast. Set a good mood. So, your latest release, Connection Lost, was mixed and mastered by Mendel Bij De Leij from Ex-Aborted, an ex-member of Aborted. I really hope I pronounced your name correctly, mate. If I haven't, I'll buy you a beer once everything's over. Good. So, I saw that you guys recorded everything yourselves except for the drums, which was recorded in a studio. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
In relation to that of being quite self-sufficient, as one has to in this day and age, why did you guys go with getting the record mixed and mastered by, say, a third party in this instance?
You want to go for it, or shall I?
Yeah, so basically, like, Mendel's done, as well as this album, he did our self-titled EP that came before it. And our first EP, Into the Unknown, was mixed by someone local. And with Mendel, it was basically working out about the same sort of amount money-wise. But what we were getting was something that we were happier with, so it was just kind of a no-brainer to go with him. And with the fact of it just being someone third person in general, I suppose because the fact that it's sort of a luxury to be able to just go into a studio, book a couple of weeks and record everything there with the one person who's doing all the recording, mix it all with them. It's just a bit of a luxury that we don't really have to be able to spend all the money on that, because obviously you've got all the costs that come after recording, which is why we'd kind of gone with recording everything we could ourselves, anything not booking recording time, and then just sending it off to someone else to mix the whole thing. Really was just, quality of the product that we were getting out of it and the monetary side of it, mostly.
I'd say there was probably two main things that benefits we got. One, I mean, Mendel really got what we were doing, and I don't, you can't put a price on that, really. He saw our sound. We don't sound like Aborted, do you know what I mean? But he saw what we were trying to achieve, which is that, really sort of bringing the thrash and the groove into the and kind of just rolling that all together with a bunch of others. He really got it, and that's great. You know, the other one is probably quite accidental because he's so far away. Because we had to send everything off to him, we had like a physical distance that allowed him to be able to say, "This is what I'm thinking," and that, you know, without us being there and having 15 million revisions, do you know, it meant that he was able to put his professional opinion onto it without that kind of, like, he wasn't scared about saying, "Oh, that's out of tune," or "Can you put that bit up a little bit," or "Can you retake that bass part?" Do you know?
Yeah.
I think that completely accidental, but that's one of the main reasons why I think the albums come out and the EP before came out sounding as good as they do. You know, he's been good for us to work with. Granted, it's not really us that's had the most of the time having to do.
Yeah, it's mostly our guitarist Drew, who, you know, like, he's the point of contact with him. So, you know, it's mostly down to him. Yeah. As is a lot of things with the band.
He did a thingy on like a, what do you call it, on YouTube. He did a video with some of my vocals on it as well. I was I think absolutely honoured that he would have chosen a bit of my vocals to demonstrate one of the different plugins for his the software he was using. I was like, look, it's me.
Really cool.
Yeah. He chose a totally shit bit as well. I don't know, but there you go. But he took it and made it sound great. So
that's incredible. To be honest, I actually find it really interesting the way that you've put that, Colin, in relation to not being like over his shoulder constantly and be like, nah, don't like this, don't like that, or you know, detune the snare or things like that, which is quite.
I think then you'll never get it finished, and you'd never be fully happy with it. Do you know? If I mean, both Sean and Drew are they're more than capable in the studio of producing good sounding music. Absolutely more than capable. But if they were both responsible for it, we would still be mixing it now. Do you know? Because there would always be something you could do a little bit better. There'd always be something that you could improve. And if you then say, "Oh, I don't like that," then does it become more personal? Do you know? Having that degree of separation, I think, has been absolutely invaluable. And it was a complete accident. And that's been a really, really positive thing for us.
No, for sure.
Yeah, it does create a good sort of distance as well, because then because you guys will have listened to songs a million times.
Yeah.
And any musician that has ever recorded knows the pain of having, I've recorded the demo about 100 times, fantastic, doing all my revisions, recording it. Oh, I want to add this bit. Great. Everyone else, this song sounds amazing. You listen to it, I fucking hate it. I can't stand it anymore. Exactly. I don't want to listen to it anymore. I'm done.
Exactly. Yeah, like, I think it definitely helped having, like, where it is done, you know, like, with us waiting to get something back from him, because the fact that it means that you have, like, maybe a week or two between listening to each revision, rather than listening to it over and over and over with them in that studio setting. It means that every time you're getting revisions, you're sort of going into it with a fresh mind, I think. Which is one of the big things that I think has definitely worked with that.
Yeah, definitely. That makes complete sense, because, again, it's someone who's completely distanced from that as a unbiased opinion, so to speak, or, as you said, it's got such chemistry with you guys anyway, on such distance that he does when he needs to as well. What's also handy with someone who does this 24/7, it's quicker. Because when you're someone who's in a band, that's my personal opinion anyway. I think generally, if you're someone that's in a band and you're mainly playing music, you don't want to be mixing and mastering as well, because you still need to practice your craft. You still need to practice what you're doing. Therefore, you can't 100% dedicate yourself to mixing and mastering like an actual mixing and mastering engineer can.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like, I think it probably would have been a position of, you know, giving 50% to, you know, doing the band stuff, and then 50% to doing stuff for other bands. You know, and as you said, it's better to be able to give 100% to one or the other. So I think that's definitely been, you know, like, a big part of it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you've got exceptions to the rule. You've got some people that can just do stuff like that from the pull of their hat.
Yeah,
they're assholes. It's the jealousy talking. Don't worry, Chris. I love you. But no, it's really cool to see that you guys have gone with someone who does understand you and sort of learning from the previous experience.
Yeah.
try and get exactly what you wanted. So, yes, on top of that, you also, what I've also seen is that you guys managed to get ex-members from Machine Head and Sacred Reich on the record. How did that sort of come about?
Go for it.
So with Phil Demel of Ex-Machine Head, that's just because the fact that our guitarist he's gotten quite pally with him over the last few years, from him being a diehard Machine Head fan, to then he managed to get in a position of being friends with them. And particularly Phil, I think it's Phil that he's been closest with.
Done guitar clinics and whatnot.
Exactly. You got to do a guitar clinic with Phil in Glasgow at Guitar. And my understanding is that it was at that clinic that he sort of posed it as an idea, and Phil was just like, "Yeah, sick, let's do it," So when he told the rest of us that he'd said that he was going to do a guest solo on the album, we were all like, "Holy fuck!"
The thing about it is the thing that will Phil DeMille's one of the biggest guitarists in the world, right? And he's he didn't just do a solo, just like whatever that'll do and send it over. The thing he sent over had was it 60 odd takes?
It's like 64 takes or something.
Yeah, each of them getting more and more. I mean, he wrote the solo. Yeah, he didn't just sort of just throw anything out there and go, yeah, cool, there you go, that'll do. He really, really wanted to make something great. Says a lot for Drew as well, because obviously that's the relationship that's given us that meant that Phil wanted to put the solo on in the first place.
Yeah, for sure.
Drew's over the moon with it.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, he's a wee it's like all of his birthdays and Christmases coming at once.
Oh yeah. And with Joey as well, even though he's not as big a name as Phil, it's still great because the fact that Sacred Reich are still, a big band, they're a name that people who are into thrash at least know. Joey's a great guy. We got to support Sacred Reich in Glasgow last year, and it was just from that gig coming about and just speaking to them, and really posing it as an idea. Yeah,
really, really nice guy.
No, he's
one
really,
of them
really
proper
nice guy,
genuine lads.
Yeah, totally. So it's a massive
sick as well.
Yeah, they're both really great solos, which is the biggest benefit. But yeah, it's just a total honor to have both of them doing guest solos on the album.
I think the best thing about it, and same as it is with Drew, it shines well on us as people. I think because the way we carry ourselves, we're pro, but we're not arseholes. Do you know? Yeah. And I think that means that these kind of things are more likely to come about. See, if we cut about gig venues like we own the place and whatnot, then folk don't want to do this kind of stuff with you. Do you know what I mean? Oh, yeah. Whereas certainly when we supported Sacred Reich, we're humble guys. We're genuine, and I think that probably came across. Which is, I'm assuming, why these kind of things happen.
For sure.
He's the most down to earth guy you'll meet, and I know that's why him and Phil get on so well. So
yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Most of those genuine guys, they stick out and they stay. They're here to stay most of the time. I remember having a conversation with one of my previous guests, actually a few of them now, and this is one of the great things of metal music, because you know how they generally say, don't meet your heroes. I don't think that's true, at least not in rock and metal, at least 99% of the time. A lot of them are such nice, genuine guys. They always have, they always have 5 minutes to give to you. Those 5 minutes can be some of the greatest moments of your life. In your guitarist's case, that led to him actually doing a solo on one of his records, which is fuck, what?
Yeah, totally. No, for sure. I don't think I've ever met anyone from a big band or a proper band, however you want to put it, that I've thought was just a dick. Really, I've never really had that myself.
Is it then in rock and metal? It's kind of the other way around. It's not about not meeting your heroes or whatever. It's more that rock and metal fans tend not to put their heroes on pedestals the same way, so there's not so much of a, if you go meet them and realise that they're actually totally sound, you kind of expected that anyway. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's it. Look at it.
It completely depends. Like someone like Metallica, as an example, I'm sure you've seen videos of, I don't know, James Hetfield giving this guy a guitar and he's crying, he's in tears.
Yeah.
He's ready to have a stroke. That's how happy he is. It's I don't think it's necessarily metal fans don't put bands on pedestals, but I think the expectation is that they're still people, and that's something that they bring across a lot. Someone just as a crude example, Kanye West. For example, he doesn't display himself like a normal person. He
Yeah.
displays himself as, I am God. So some people will, of course, interpret that as, oh, he is God. I should treat him like that. And then meeting him, potentially, they could get very, very disappointed by the reception that they're receiving.
Yeah, quite possibly.
Yeah, I think that's probably about right, yeah.
Yeah, that's fair, yeah.
And for those people that are getting upset because I said Kanye might be like that, might is the word here. I've never met him. I don't follow Kanye West. His music's very well produced. However, that is all I have to say.
It's very diplomatic.
Yeah.
To be honest, I stand on the platform of, I don't think any music's really shit.
Mm-hmm.
You might not like certain music, and that's fine. It doesn't mean that this music's shit. Like, an argument that I see a lot is like Nickelback and Five Finger Death Punch. So, God, they're really shit bands. I see it as, they're not though. They're massive. They live in, they live in huge houses and don't have day jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
like they're good.
and enough people like them for them to be in that position. So they're not shit bands. You just don't like them.
As soon as you're writing your own music and doing your own thing, you're pretty much entitled to whatever you get back from it, really. You know, put yourself out there and whatever you get back is fair. Because if you make music that sells to enough people, then I guess you've earned it. And it's not like these guys don't work hard.
Oh,
yeah, totally.
You know? I mean, Nickelback, I think they're on a wee bit of a break just now. I don't know, I'm not a huge fan of the band at all. But that's what I understand it, they haven't done anything in a while. But those guys tour like incessantly. Same with Five Finger Death Punch. Again, it's not a band that I would go out of my way to listen to, but it's not like they're living off of one big single. You know,
no, they keep making records. They're touring constantly, and they sound incredible live.
Yeah, totally. Like there's like nothing actually wrong with what they do. You know, it's just that it's not to the taste of some people, and some people get a bit, I don't know, upset over the fact that it's not to their taste when it doesn't have to be.
It is a baffling way to look at things, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really, when you put it.
It's like you've got the traditionalists, as I call them. Like, they're not using amps on stage. Yeah, why? Why do they need to use amps on stage? They have the equipment in a little box that sounds exactly the same. Maybe 0.01% hear the difference. 99% of people, they don't, and they don't care. They're having a great time. It's not like lip syncing. Lip syncing is a whole different thing. That's cheating altogether. However, it's just stuff like that, really. Whereas, they're not doing this right or that right. It's like, no, there's no right or wrong way to do it. Don't be an arsehole. Have a great time. Engage with the audience if that's what your niche is. And that's it. That's practically all you need to do. Those are literally some of the only rules. One thing that I do think is you're an entertainer. As a musician, you are an entertainer first and foremost.
Yeah, for sure. Like, it's definitely, I'd rather go and see a band whose stuff isn't really to my taste, but they put on a good show. Like, they all look like they're really into it, and like they look like they're enjoying it, and you can really sort of feel the kind of vibe that they're trying to give off. Like, I'd rather see that than a band that I think puts out really good music, but everyone just looks like they want to go home, because it's boring to watch. And I'm like, well, it's not boring to listen to, but in that case, I'd just listen to the album. You know,
it's the difference between a live show and an album, isn't it? You know, if you want to listen to music, you'll go listen to an album. If you want to go and be entertained, you're going to go and watch them live. I watched Mastodon play live about 10 years ago now, and they rattled through a set which must have had 20, 26, 27 songs in it, something like that. It was insane. No stops. There was no audience interaction at all. And I was like, well, really, I expected something. Brandaler at the end of it came up to the front of the stage, and he spoke for about 5-10 minutes, something like that, to everybody to say, yeah, we didn't say anything. That was because we wanted to just get the whole thing out. We didn't want to stop. We wanted to provide an awesome show for you guys. Thank you so much for being here. And he put it all in at the end, and it was so heartfelt and genuine. I'm actually getting a wee bit of goosebump thinking about it. It was, there's many ways to tell your stories. There's many ways to go about it, and to put on a show. And they put on a great show anyway, lights and pyros and everything else that you have to, I think there are many ways to put on that show, and that's got to be if you're doing. I mean, and nowadays as well, because nobody's making money out of recorded music anymore. If you're wanting to make money out of music, you're going to have to go on tour. You're going to have to go and sell tickets. You're going to have to go and sell merch.
So you want to be an engaging live band to make sure that you can keep that up.
Indeed,
Exactly.
that's something certainly we do anyway.
I'd like to think that we're
that's probably
pretty decent at putting on a show. Like I'd like to think it's one of our strengths.
Yes,
is putting on a show.
I would definitely suggest that that's probably the case, particularly since we got Kenny in to play bass, and then I can focus on the vocals. That's it's meant we're now really able to kind of create a much more engaging live.
Yeah, for sure.
Thing. Both Drew and Sean always rock out like they're loving themselves.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Loving themselves, if you know what I mean.
But that's so good when you're like this is from vocalist to vocalist. It's so great when you're not playing an instrument. You can just run about. You can just do all this crazy shit.
Yeah, like your stage presence has changed a lot since because I'm not got something in your hands all the time.
And I love it. Absolutely
it's much more you.
Yeah. I love it. The energy you can get out of it. And even in the rehearsal rooms, I'm running around like an idiot, do you know? Because I love to just get that bit of energy, you know, and it's a symbiotic thing, isn't it? You know, the energy that a band puts into their show, it comes back from whoever's there to see it, and so on and so forth. You know, the best gigs don't have to be packed, but if there's a real bit of energy going on between the crowd and the band, it just makes all the difference.
Yeah, like I'd rather play to 15 people who are really into it and sort of going a bit ham than 150 people who just look like they're waiting for your set to be finished. Yes. Like it's a rubbish position to be in. It's one totally. That I think everyone's been in as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm sure that you're the same, that you just probably rather play to a few people who are really into it than loads who just couldn't care less.
I've had enough gigs like that. I'm just like, why the fuck am I? Like, have you ever had that where you have played a show and you have a whole room of people that don't give a fuck what you're doing just because they're there to see their mate's band or something like that, and you're just like, why the fuck am I even playing? Like, this is getting stupid.
But I mean, I don't know. I'm quite positive minded when it comes to stuff like that. My way of looking at it is you go, you do your very best, and hopefully you win a couple of people over. You know I mean.
Yeah, like it's good to try and look at it like that and like hope that like, well, even if I did play to loads of people who seemed like they couldn't have cared any less, maybe there was one or two of them that I couldn't see that they didn't enjoy it.
All you can try and do, but it's not as much fun.
No,
it really is difficult. And I think in that sense it becomes forced, and I think an audience, like anybody, can smell when there's something not quite as genuine going on, which is why I think that real human interaction comes over so well. And everybody has a better time, the band and whoever's there to see, audience and whatnot.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
human interaction is what we're all about. It's our thing. It's a connection lost.
That's true though. Like the audience can smell bullshit from a mile away.
Oh yeah.
You can't fake. Yeah, you can't fake any of that.
No.
You're either genuine or you're not. That's the simplicity of it, really.
Yep, indeed. That's why I only write lyrics about stuff that I care about, because I want to go out there, and if I'm going to shout about something, I'm going to make sure it's something that I'm shouting about that I actually give a shit about.
Yeah.
And you're going to know that I give a shit about it because you'll feel it. And if not, then I never really feel comfortable singing other people's songs or whatever else for that exact reason. You can smell it. You know it's not genuine.
I don't think I'm particularly comfortable writing lyrics about feet. No, I'm joking. But feet are okay. I feel indifferent to feet. I don't see them as a negative or positive thing. Feet are feet. If you like feet, go ahead.
Quite
if you don't
a lot
like
of people
feet, bless you too.
Oh no, this is a downward direction.
Yeah, no, let's say.
But yeah, in this regard, what was actually let's go by drums first. Let's start with Calum in this regard. In relation to this record, what was who inspired you the most in relation to this particular record? As you know yourself, every time you write something, there is something that you're influenced by in particular. You're like, I want to try this, or that's really cool, I want to add that, and so on and so forth. Is there anything in particular or anyone that has affected your playing or your writing in this particular record for All Connection Lost?
Yeah, definitely. Like it's one of those things where I I'd say that like heavy music is probably only about half of what I listen to, and especially with drummers, like generally most of my favorite drummers aren't people who play in metal bands. Like a few of them are. Like the two sources of inspiration that always stick for me are Dave McLean, ex Machine Head, now back in Sacred Reich, and Sean Reiner that was in Cynic and Death Briefly. Um, and for me, I think like because the fact that with Sean Reiner, a lot of the inspiration for me came from the fact that he didn't listen to a lot of metal music when writing his own parts for like his metal music. Like I've seen interviews with him, speaking about doing Human by Death, and he was like, I wasn't listening to heavy music; it was stuff like Chick Corea and all that kind of thing. And you can hear it in the way that he plays, and that's something that I've always wanted to do. Is I don't want anyone to listen to my parts and just think, oh, that's generic, by the numbers, like metal drum beats 101 for this kind of part. So for me, like I really got into a drummer called Dave Languth, who I'd never heard before, but it was only sort of part of the way through writing stuff for the album, and I was like, I like the way that he phrases things. I want to try and implement a bit of that, but I don't want it to sound like I'm trying to put fusion drums over metal songs, because that's never going to work. It's all about having your like your metal staples, like your particular beats or your kind of fills or the way that you would do things, but then seeing how you can develop that from other things that I've been listening to. And as kind of cheesy as it sounds, a big influence on me with this album in particular has been the other members of the band, because of the fact that I feel like I've been pushed quite a lot with this one. Like I think there was definitely a couple of songs where I would make, like, all I could hear when trying to think of what to write was stuff that I wasn't really happy with, and it was like the expected thing for like the whole thing, and I was like, well, it's making me not find much fun in this song or whatever. But I think other members of the band have definitely pushed me to sort of think outside the box when I'm struggling to do so. So yeah, I'd say Dave McLean, Sean Reiner, other members of the band, and this time round, Dave Langus was one that was a new one for me.
Okay, and what about Colin?
In terms of what, Calum's drums?
Yes, Calum's drums. How did they inspire you to write lyrics?
Can I actually add about Calum's drums? That no, he's totally right. Nobody would
how
ever.
dare you? How dare you talk about drums? You're a singer. You and I are singers. We don't discuss drums.
No, I'm going to break stereotype. No one would ever describe Calum as a generic drummer, and I love him for it, because that's it's a huge part of how we sound, how we do. I don't think you could necessarily. I mean, we've got a pretty broad sound. You've listened to the album. There's there's a lot of different stuff going on in there, and I think if you're the blast beats, start to finish kind of drummer, which is cool if that's what you're into, no bother with that at all. But that's not Calum's thing. I think we would struggle with the real undulating sound that we've got, ebbing and flowing and whatnot, which is much more certainly what we were trying to aim for. So Calum's a great drummer for us, and those other influences that he's got and his own creativity really shines through. And as one of the people who fought for it, I'm really proud that he's managed to kind of really represent himself so well on the album.
Thanks, man. That's a nice comment about me.
It does shine very well throughout the record as well. There is a good groove in record. I think that's something that's very important for both the drummer and the bassist. They're the groove section. They add the groove, while the singers and the guitarists are the ones that create sort of like the nice overlay.
Yeah, for sure. Like you could take one riff and put 10 different rhythm parts over it, and it'd completely transform the riff. Like they could all work, but the direction that it makes the whole piece go in could just change massively. So I'm glad that you listening to it have thought that that's worked with the way that we've done it.
Yeah, I mean, now this is just my thoughts in general in regard to recording, which is you can have a shit guitar sound, you can have a shit vocal sound. However, when the bass and the drums sound good, the rest of it sounds good. Of course, unless the vocals and guitars are like out of tune, just god awful. If you've got say, a great guitar sound, great vocals, but the bass and the drums sound like shit. That I think that sort of destroys the entire production. That's the way I see it, at least.
I think that's when you're looking at real, for lack of a better word, more amateur sounding production, because typically at that sort of level, you'll get somebody who knows how to make a guitar sound good, knows how to make some vocals sound good, which, by layering up and whatnot, is fairly easily done.
Mm-hmm.
But trying to get your bass and your drums sitting in the pocket and tight, and having a drummer who can actually carry off the chops that they're trying to do, I mean, that's not easy to do. So no, I think I would probably agree with you.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to Colin in relation to your influences, vocal-wise and lyrically, or message-wise, in relation to this record.
So I tend to favour vocalists with different voices, like with who mix up a few different voices. There's Hurde from Finnish band Stamina, who I'm a huge fan of. They're all Finnish language, but the boy's voice is incredible. He's got a beautiful singing voice. He's got the most meaty lows. He's got a good pitched, kind of thrashy, shouty voice. I'm really getting into Ginger just now. So Tatiana Schmaluk, her voice is insane as well.
Yeah.
I'm not these guys, but I love the way that you can get a vocalist who can really delve in and out of different sounds as they go. That's something that inspires me a lot in terms of my vocal. Big fan of Scroobius Pip. I love his stuff. I love a bit of spoken word. I'm quite glad I got a wee bit of that on the album as well. It took a wee bit of pushing, but I'm glad it's there. And he's, I guess lyrically, I take a lot of inspiration from him as well. He's very on point. He likes to talk about things that are relevant, and that's definitely something that I'm interested in doing in terms of theme. I mean, the whole album Connection Lost is about the organic relation between people, between ourselves and the natural world around us, and the contrast between that and the mechanical. How we communicate with each other through devices and electronically, much like we're doing right now, for example. And how it's not necessarily like it's not all critical, just an observation, I guess. But in terms of people who've inspired me, Hurde from Stamina and Tatiana would be the big ones for me as things stand, because of the way that they managed to mix up all these different vocal styles. That's something I'm working on.
Okay, that's quite interesting, because generally whenever I ask a vocalist this question, it's usually quite, I wouldn't necessarily say generic, but it's usually quite big bands. I wouldn't say they're small bands, but obscure.
No. It's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, Scroobius Pip, right? He has this quote. It says, "If you think what you've done is the best you can do, you can't have very much to aspire to," which is something that I've kind of, I guess, somewhat ironically, used as a kind of motto for myself to kind of. I don't like to measure myself against other people. I'll measure myself against what I'm doing, and if the guys in the band are happy with what I'm doing, then that means I must be doing all right, I guess.
Yeah, so that's been a pretty common thing that, like, since you said something nice about me, I suppose that you'll get something nice here. It was that, like, we've all said that, like, a big part of our sound that we enjoy is the fact that, like, Cole doesn't just do one vocal style for the whole thing. You're like, where the album's like 47 minutes long, if it was just one vocal sound for the whole thing, you'd just be a bit sick of it by the end of it, given the kind of stuff that we do. And like everyone in the band, I think, would say that there's definitely been like you can see the development from the last EP to this one, and where you've, much like it's been with me with my drum parts, where you've been given a bit more room to really explore what you're wanting to do, largely because the fact that there has been 12 tracks instead of 5, with where we've got things like acoustic parts and clean sections and even bits of strings in them and stuff. It gives you a bit more room to play with for what you can bring to the table, and I think that you've definitely shown in that regard on the album for sure.
Thanks. We're going to have a big hug soon. Socially distant.
I also would like to point out what I appreciate that Colin's doing is you're also paying attention to what the other members of the band are doing music-wise, rather than just I'm the vocalist, I'm just going to focus vocals, which you don't see that often. So that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, there's two good reasons for that. One, because I'm not a dickhead. Two, because if you'd met Drew, that would never float. Because he'll make sure that the songs sounds how like he's got a pretty strong idea of what is and is not going to go where it's going to go, and that's great because as someone who brings a lot of the music to the table, that
it's a pretty fair stance to take on it. Like
absolutely.
Generally, I think if you're in a band with people who you actually like a lot and people that you have respect for, both as people and as musicians, if someone's got a really strong idea about something, or they're really sort of set on the direction they want something to go in, 95% of the time you can kind of trust what they're wanting to do with it. Because I've had it with drum parts. Someone's brought something to the table, and what I've put as what I want to do for the drums, I've gone, no, that's really not what I heard. It might be a bit sometimes you do have to warm up to taking other people's advice, but generally I think every time that we do it as a band and across all instruments, Drew, Sean, Kenny, both of us, I think we could all say that every time that we give, what the band gets out of it is always worth it, I'd say.
Yeah. I mean, from the start, that's the way we've looked at it. Is what's best for the song is always going to be what
happens.
Yeah, absolutely. But then what I think we've managed to do in Connection Lost that we didn't necessarily do as well before was be able to make sure that you got your real stamp on it, and same as I did as well. Drew does.
Yeah, for sure.
So we've managed to kind of balance that, right?
Yeah,
so we've
definitely
been able to say we're going to make sure that the songs sound as good as they can, but at the same time, nobody's getting kind of pushed into doing anything. We're all kind of getting a good opportunity to be able to do what we want to do. And plus, I mean, there's really obvious stuff. Didn't sing over a solo. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, it has to be about trying to make it all sound good. And I think we've all got a bigger picture in mind, which is going to be part of it as well. It's not like I turn up and go, yeah, whatever. I'm just here to do my vocals, mate. That because that's not how we roll.
So, Colin, on the next record, are you going to do scat vocals?
Am I going to do what?
Are you going to get a scat solo?
No, I don't imagine. No, because there's no words. If I'm not, it's all about telling stories for me. So, I'd be wanting to make sure that I want to get, I would want to make a point. So, no.
I think scat would make a pretty strong point. Depends. I think you would agree as well. But
I mean, you could be singing about someone who's falling down the stairs, and you're describing how to fall down the stairs by doing a scat.
All right.
Are you passionate about people falling down the stairs?
The thing is, I don't give much of a monkeys about people falling down the stairs. It doesn't pass me one way or the other. It's their own fault.
They could be falling down the stairs because they're staring at their phone. See? Full circle.
Yeah, okay.
There you go. You've tricked him now.
Yeah, that's it. God damn it.
You've
got me. I walked right into it as well.
On top of that as well, I also want to point out with Calum, his pronunciation, which I'm quite happy with, how he pronounced it, Sacred Reich, which I quite like. This is something that I've always liked about the Scottish. It's you guys pronounce German words correctly. You don't just put K's and just random syllables in there.
Like a K where's a K? Isn't the same thing. Yeah.
Where the fuck's a K in this? There is no K.
Yeah, it's been around all those lochs.
It must be.
Yeah.
It must be. All them Dreich lochs.
That's the thing for you guys. It's also a lot easier to speak a language like German than the average English speaker, like English, Welsh, Irish, and American, because you guys use a lot of the same sort of pronunciations with
Yeah, there's a lot more of the throaty sounds.
Exactly. I think you guys can also do lip trills, if I remember that right.
Was that?
Like lip trills, like brücke, like rolling R's and things.
Like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like you guys can actually pronounce that properly. So if you guys have to learn German and have an actual German accent is feasible for someone who generally speaks English, it's not. Because my dad's completely English. He tried to speak German, and it's just you can tell he's a foreigner immediately.
Yeah. Whereas you can
immediately tell because just stop speaking German. Don't.
I mean, yeah, I'd never really thought about that, but it's a pretty fair point, to be honest.
Yeah, most of the north of Europe's got these kind of harsh sounds and rolling R's and whatnot. I'm learning to speak Finnish just now. That's rolling
that's
R's.
really hard, apparently.
It's a bloody nightmare, man. But yeah, it's good. It's good fun. I like learning.
Languages are always quite interesting. I remember I had an interview with the singer from Hasty Dixie years ago. We just ended up spending 3 hours just talking about linguistics, and he was explaining how if you know German, learning Norwegian is quite easy. So I thought, how so? I asked him. He said, well, they're very similar languages. They use a lot of the same words. I thought, really? I never thought about that. So I went on Duolingo. I'm like, holy fuck, he's right. Holy shit, I could learn this overnight if I needed to. I'm exaggerating, obviously. There's a lot.
Not two languages that you'd expect to share, or I certainly wouldn't anyway. I don't know if that's Germanic language for me to say.
Both Norwegian and Swedish have got Germanic roots, haven't they? So that would be presumably why they all tie in.
There you go, linguistics expert over here.
No, don't call me a linguistics expert, please. If you've seen how bad.
Then you've got Dutch, which is like the Welsh of the German language.
Yeah. I'd say the pronunciation, a lot of the pronunciation in that language is really difficult as well.
Our bassist, he's half Scottish and half German.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't know how to speak German anymore, but he's learning Dutch. And whenever we're in a chat, I start speaking German, he starts speaking Dutch. Like, stop speaking your devil language. Stop it. You're German. Stop it.
Does it feel like he's blaspheming or something?
Dutch confuses me. There's just something about the language that confuses me so much to a point where I'm like, no, stop.
It just shouldn't exist.
Practically, yeah. Denmark is lovely, and to be honest, I do actually want to generally visit at some point one day, and then I can get confused and just go into homicidal rage. Like, stop it! Just speak German, please. Or Norwegian. One of them, please.
One of them, yeah.
But yeah, apart from linguistics, let's move away from that because Colin doesn't. He looks like he's about to get very upset that we keep calling him a linguistics expert.
I'm afraid I've just got one of them faces that looks like I'm waiting to cry all the time. It's just one of those things. I've just had to live with it.
He's a walking Duolingo.
You are the Duolingo owl.
It's true. It's totally true.
I those his pajamas as well. He just goes to bed. He's just dressed like a green owl. Just goes to bed.
So what you need to do for Halloween? If we do a Halloween gig, if we're allowed to play gigs by Halloween.
Here's hoping.
Yeah.
That'd be so cool, though. Just come on stage and you've just got all these little cards, like billboards. You just got like welcome and hello in different languages.
It'd be right out there, wouldn't it?
I think you definitely have to do that at some point now.
That'd be so cool. It's like, we are Catalysis and just like all in different languages.
That would have been great for a tour.
It would have been great for a tour. You know, why didn't we think of that? Oh, well, we didn't. So that's that. The tour was amazing.
It was.
Just create a Duolingo death metal band. Done.
That just sings in a whole bunch of different languages.
That'd be pretty cool, to be fair.
Every line's in a different language.
Yeah. That could be pretty cool.
So
no, you have no idea.
So cool. Because who was it? There's a singer. She performed them like on the old Ghost in the Shell movie, and she sang in like 5 different languages. I think German, Japanese, Russian, English, I think Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
And it flowed so nicely. This is so incredible. I've got so much respect for people that can do that. So they must spend so much time fitting this all together and making it sound like it sounds correct and seems grammatically correct, so on and so forth. It's probably grammatically a complete nightmare, but
yeah, like it's quite cool, like hearing stuff like that. Like a band that I'm really into, Ex-Japan, they do quite a lot of that.
Yeah,
where like most of the lyrics are in Japanese, but then there's just like halfway through a line of Japanese, there's just some English words.
Yeah,
and like if you were to like look the lyrics up, like you can see certainly from album to album, it just gets more and more grammatically correct. And I'm just like, I wish I had a skill like that, just being able to, like, just go between languages in a song. Like, that'd be crazy.
It's not quite common for Japanese bands to do that. I know that
Max from the Hormone,
the Mad Capture Markets do the same thing. Like, they'll just randomly drop in a couple of English words for fun.
However, Ex-Japan, I think if I'm getting this right, I don't know their entire history. I think they're one of the first big rock bands in Japan.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, because they started in 1980. I think it was 1987 that their first came out. Their first album came out. It was either 87 or 88.
They were quite big.
So it wouldn't have been as popular back then as it is now.
No, they're, I think, one of the biggest bands in the country. I think if
they are, like,
this right.
Performances they do. Like, it's weird because, like, if you ask people over here, like, certainly for me, I don't know, maybe a handful of people that are into them, but it's, like 25,000 capacity arenas that they sell out, even in London and stuff, and it's just mental how that happens. But but like people who, like, given that obviously we're in the grand scheme of things not that far away from London, I would just think, they'd maybe played like 500 people down there or something, not 25,000.
It's bizarre because there's another guy. He did the Kill Bill theme. I always forget what his name is now, but he's massive. He's so big in Japan. So he's mainly an instrumentalist as well. Because you know the Kill Bill theme where it's like a da 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 da. Yeah. And
I'm not going to get out of my head now, but thankfully that means I've not got Japan in my head anymore, so that's great.
Yeah, because I remember reading an interview with him, and I think he sold something like 4.5 billion, 5.5 billion records in Japan alone.
Yeah,
that's like singles. This is like everything, and he's been doing it since like the 80s. And he's like, like outside of the East, nobody knows me. It's like, how does this shit happen?
Yeah, it's bizarre how bands can just, I suppose, like, certainly where you, like, if you're looking at like Japanese bands and stuff, it'd make a bit more sense because I suppose like a lot of people in the Western world aren't, like, would maybe have less interest in a band where they don't know what the lyrics are, possibly. Like, maybe to your average Western consumer, it's a bit off-putting. Like, you get with loads of bands like Duran Gray, the Gazette, like all those massive Japanese bands, or that are huge over there and still sell loads of records. Like, you don't know many people that are into them. Certainly, I don't. I could be in the minority. I'm just not looking for people who like the same music as me in the right way.
No, you're right. Not singing in English is going to be an issue for a lot of people.
Which is maybe why a lot of those bands, will implement even just a couple of words here and there, because then that sticks with people a bit more. Maybe I don't really know.
I think the Japanese culture is quite into just like random crossing into different borrowing words from different languages. It's become part of their cultural thing.
Yeah, totally. For sure.
Not that I've ever been to Japan, but as I understand it.
Cool. But yeah, no, you're completely right. Like, not singing in English does seem to be something that gets in the way of a lot of bands. But then you've got some bands that make it despite it, like Rammstein, as an example.
If you're going to put out Rammstein, there really is only Rammstein.
Yeah, because you've got Scorpions, they sing in English 99.9% of the time.
Yeah, even all your other big German metal bands,
look at
like
the Norwegian death metal, black metal bands, all of them. You would generally find most of them are in English. Your German,
like Creator and stuff, like they're all their lyrics, or certainly at least most of them anyway.
Yeah, I know Burzum did a few.
A lot of Burzum stuff.
Norwegian.
Is it? Okay, I stand corrected.
I think,
but like Mayhem, a lot of their stuff's in English, but
maybe I should start Gaelic.
No.
Start
I don't know. What do you think? Do you think Cole should start singing in Gaelic, or do you think he should stick with English?
I think unless you're starting to do folk stuff, yes. However, no, it could be actually quite cool if you add like bits of it, or like bridges and things. That'd be quite cool. That would actually sound really awesome.
You got a line of Gaelic and Cleansed.
I did get a line of Gaelic and Cleansed. That was on their last EP, but that was written about the Highland clearances, so probably.
Yeah, it's the one that made the most sense to have a line in Gaelic.
Okay. Oh, Powerwolf are a band that just came to mind because I think they've done songs in Romanian and German.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I think they have. Yeah, or like one thing that I thought was quite cool was when Sabaton did Corollas Rex, and they did an English version of the album and a Swedish version.
Oh yeah,
That's a cool thing to do.
Yeah,
Opeth. No, yeah, it is Opeth that did that as well.
yeah, they did that with their most recent album, didn't they?
I think they did. Like, they're not a band that I follow at all. They're just not a band that's quite. It's just not wormed its way into me at all. Actually, that sounds a lot more sexual than I meant it to say.
But... I like they're a band that I used to absolutely adore. Like the stuff that I like by them, I still love, but just sort of everything up to and including Watershed, I love. But it was when things started going a bit more acousticy and folky. I was like, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that, it's never the Opeth albums that I would go to if I wanted to listen to them. I could always pick up something like Morning Rise or Ghost Reveries or something like that first.
Opeth are a band to me that are not making music to sell. They're making music because it's where they're at.
Totally, yeah. So you can't even be annoyed about it. It's like
I think that as if we can bring this full circle back to what we were talking about, the likes of Nickelback and Five Finger Death Punch, and I think whilst these guys work as hard as anybody, when you get to a point where you're now releasing music that you're trying to sell, that changes the whole dynamic of being an artist entirely, doesn't it? Because it's then not, you're not then creating more like that kind of pure creativity. It's instead what is marketable, what is, what songs should go first, what's got to be a banger, hasn't it? It's got to be a banger straight out the
Isn't that what the Spotify CEO wants at this point? Just bring out 4-6 bangers a year and pennies, something.
Yeah, he's just said like American artists expect to live on an album every 3 or 4 years. Yeah.
The problem with that is it creates this that kind of single culture that we had. That's not a new thing, is it? It was a case in the 80s as well, where people would bring out. It was all about bringing out that big song that was really going to impact. It wasn't about as much the album sales. And I guess what he's saying is, you're just going to need to put out a song. It's going to need to be released. Stick it up on Spotify. Get a song, record it, put it out, stick it up on. Rather than what we did, which is to do a whole album. But that meant we could really work on it,
Yeah, totally. Like if you're looking at it from like a music industry perspective, a band of our size doing an album is completely pointless. If you're looking at it completely as a business move,
for sure.
It's something that all the experts would recommend that you don't do.
But is it? Now, I've had this discussion with a few people, and I've even was at a guitar clinic with like Ola England and Sifu something, and he was saying, like, it's no point, making albums. You should be doing EPs and singles. 3 months later, he releases an album. He shooting himself in the foot. I think he addressed that ages ago, but someone made a very good point to me, which is you never see a single or an EP in a record shop, for example. An album as well, especially if you're smaller, if you're a smaller band, not like a huge mega band, you don't have that much material. So an album is okay. This is the material that people can familiarize themselves with. It's great for people to see things live, but sometimes people want to see and hear things before they go and see someone.
Yeah, no, for sure, and like it definitely has had its benefits for us. Like even though it was would maybe be something that some people would deem as not the smartest move, it doesn't really matter because it was something that we all wanted to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what I think a big benefit for us that's only something that maybe some of us have recently started thinking about is live sets, where we generally, it's usually like a half an hour set, 6 or 7 songs that we do. We'd gotten into that rut of doing the same songs, for like a year straight. And when it's only 6 or 7 of them, you'd just, like when it came to doing band practices or whatever, you would be, should we do this song? And everyone would just kind of groan, whereas now that we've got 12 songs, most of which haven't been played live, like a few of them have, like Devils and stuff, like we've been playing that for a while now. Yeah, like those two. Yeah, like we played those when we were on tour last year and stuff. But for the most part, it's all stuff that we've not played live before. So it's, where we've got like those maybe 9 or 10 songs that have never been played live, it's going to make playing live a bit more exciting because we can sort of pick and choose. And
well, we're now sitting with 20 odd songs to choose from to be able to craft a set to keep it fresh, and I think that's
totally. And we're now in a position as well where we can play more of our older stuff, because an issue that we had was where Cole was doing vocals and bass, where like especially with the first EP that we did, where our original vocalist didn't play an instrument, none of the vocal parts had instrument in mind in regards to doing both at the same time. So a lot of the stuff that was on that first EP, it was just immediately written off because it was like no one could be expected to do this. And that's not a problem for you. It'd be for anyone. You just couldn't expect them to do both at the same time.
Unless you're Geddy Lee or somebody, you're not playing bass and singing parts at the same time.
Singing, playing bass, and playing keyboard with your toes.
And just being a badass.
And not only doing all these things, but being incredible at them all at the same time.
Totally. But now that you're... Yeah, but like now that you're back on just vocals, we can now go back to some of those older songs, which like they might just be fun to pull out once in a while, for a particular show. It's just it's something that'll help us still be invigorated with live shows, I think. Yeah. So I definitely don't regret doing an album, not by any means, even if it is something that a lot of people would deem as not the smartest decision. Like everyone in the band is doing it as a hobby and as something that is fun. Like none of us expect this to wind up being our full-time career or anything like that. Like we'd all love for it to be, but ultimately it's so difficult to do that. And where people, like you have a family, one of our other guitarists, Sean, he's got 2 kids as well, just like Cole does, like it's not feasible. So it's all about just doing what we want to do really to make it the most fun. And I think doing an album will help with that massively.
For me personally, doing an album meant that I was able to explore all those different voices that I've got and really push myself in it. Because in an EP, you need to make sure you've got some real punchy bits and pieces. With an album, you can't put a minute of spoken word on an EP.
No, an EP
that's going to be, you can, but it's going to be much more difficult to get past that kind of lull. But on an album, you've got 47 minutes odd worth of music. You can afford to take a minute out because you've just listened to 15 minutes of thrashy, groovy.
Yeah, like it's nice to have that wall break in it.
Exactly that. And that I don't regret doing an album in any way, shape, or form.
And you shouldn't as well. I mean, that's the beauty of doing an album. You're bringing out a message that you want to bring across in all of those instances. Personally, at this point, like we've released an EP, and thinking back on it, I don't think releasing an EP was the greatest of ideas. Simply out of the fact of there's such a weird middle point between a single and an album. Like with a single, like if you're looking at it on the marketing side of things as well, it's with a single, great, you can put all of your effort into that. It's low cost, you can do a video for it in some way or capacity, done. An EP, it's like you kind of can, but it's like, where do I go from there? An album, generally an album has a big message, an album has a statement.
Yeah, like a core concept or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Some you probably can do in an EP, but probably not as effectively as an album. Like with an album, you can go, like with an album, you can go on to other aspects while still keeping that core message.
Yeah.
With an EP, you can't kind of do that. You need to stay on the straight and narrow.
Yeah, like you've got your limitations. It's like just with anything, like what can you do in 15 to 20 minutes versus what can you do in 45 to 50 minutes? Like it's just, you could sort of do that with anything. So yeah, I would agree. I don't think an EP versus an album is any different in that regard. Especially like with sound as well as like your message and stuff. Like with an EP, you've got to keep it concise, because with an EP, if you've got loads of variation, it just kind of sounds like you don't know what you're doing. To a lot of people, that's how it would come across anyway.
You mastered these 4 different songs over the last year and just kind of polished them together and pushed it out.
Yeah, like it could sound like it's just 4 or 5 singles rather than one thing, whereas with an album, it's a lot easier to be concise and cohesive, but with variation,
So as a consumer, or as a fan of music, if I was to listen to an EP, I reckon I would gauge whether or not it's a band I wanted to go and listen more to. If I'm listening to an album, that's going to tell me whether it's a band that I like. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's that.
I'd say that's pretty fair. Yeah, it's like how like where we have YouTube and stuff now. Like if you hear about a band, you just go and look them up and you listen to a few songs to see if there's someone that you want to bother your time listening to a bit more.
But you go
so I suppose
you go stick an album on and you get an idea of what they're actually about.
Yeah.
Where are they delving? Where are the bits? How often
sure.
do they break that into that same 2.5 minutes through? Are you going into a halftime breakdown again every single time? And then in which case I'm like, well, that's now not as
I mean, that's the thing. If you have certain songs, say you're releasing several singles, and then you think, oh, they actually work quite well together. We've got a bunch of songs with that work. You've released these singles already. You've never said that they're going to be on an album. Then suddenly you can say, oh, yeah, these songs are going to be on this album, so on and so forth. There's nothing wrong with that. Pop stars have always done it.
Yeah.
A lot of the pop star records are to rehash the same shit. However, some of it is great. Some of it does work with each other. In some way, it is kind of a waste having a single and not later attaching it to something else. Like, Slipknot did that with All Out Life, I think. And personally, I thought it was a great fucking tune. I think it's one of the best. Personally, I find it's one of the best tunes they've written in a long time. Then they said, "Oh, we're not going to have that on the album." Like, I can understand why they haven't, because it's a completely different vibe to that. But still, an incredible song. I think one band that did do that quite well, from if I followed it right, is Raised by Owls. So they kept on releasing like single. Suddenly, oh, we're releasing an album by Jim Will Paint It. Sorry, that the artwork was done by Jim Will Paint It. He didn't mix and master it. But it's like that's really cool. So like, you've got the videos, you've got all this other stuff that markets it, so to speak, and then oh, by the way, we've got an album. It's like, fuck, awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like I suppose with that stuff, it all kind of depends on how you go about it. Like if you do it in such a way where it seems like you know what you're doing, then you're kind of like it'll work for you, I guess. Whereas if it just kind of seems like a bit of a mess all over the place, you're just kind of doing whatever springs to mind whenever, then it's just going to seem a bit, what the fuck are these guys doing, I guess.
Yeah. Indeed. It goes back to what we said before about being able to buy into it, isn't it? Like you say, music fans can smell bullshit. If you put something together that's cohesive and has and feels like it belongs together, which I think we've done with the album.
Yeah, I'd say so. Or I'd like to think so anyway.
Then that makes it easier for somebody to buy into. It makes it easier for someone to listen to the whole thing. We were looking at the numbers for our plays the other day. We're not getting a significant drop off throughout the whole record, which I think that's probably a pretty good sign. Because often the first song you'll get however many views and then a big drop for the second and then the third, and by the end of the album you've got hardly anybody still listening. And if you can keep that going, which we seem to have.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was definitely good to getting those numbers back and seeing that it was, sort of saying
folk have stuck around.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, which is nice.
You only got put off by my spoken word at the last song.
Yeah.
Like they all skipped to the last song. It's like, what the fuck is this? Is this a whole record?
Yeah.
It's just spoken word for an hour.
Yeah. Indeed.
So we're into this within an hour, so let me skip on to the sponsor. Yeah, let's hear about the sponsor one more time. So the podcast is sponsored by Extreme, which is powered by Bandcamp. It is a streaming service similar to Spotify, Apple Music and Deezer. See, I actually put Apple Music before Deezer this time round, and all the other streaming services. Why would you pay for a service like Extreme? You've already got Spotify, you've already got Apple Music, and you've already got Deezer and all the other ones. I don't know why you're paying for 6 different music subscriptions, but you do with your money what you want. However, what Extreme does is it gives a much larger payout to the artist. The service has only been live for a month, and my band Parrilla and our bassist's solo project Razorhead have already seen a much larger return from Extreme than Spotify. I understand that you want to see us all play live constantly, and that's absolutely fantastic. We do want to play live for you guys. However, we'd also like to see some kind of return for our music. So, I've forgotten how to speak English. Yes, if you want to support my band, Parrilla, and myself, and all other sort of smallish bands, subscribe to Extreme. If you absolutely hate me and you want to support another band from Extreme, go ahead and subscribe to Extreme. Thank you so much. And we're going back to Catalysis. There we go. I stumbled back into it. We've got Calum and Colin, who are discussing their latest record and other bits about music and so on and so forth, as this is completely all improvised. There's no plan behind it. So we're just talking shit and you love it. So,
You've picked the two biggest shite talkers in the band as well, so...
But we've got the singer and the drummer, so fantastic. Drummers do like to talk. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. They don't actually beat their own heads in public. Drummers are actually too smart for their own good. I've said that several times in my podcast, and I will keep saying it. Our drummer's a fucking IT technician. You can't be stupid to be an IT technician. Just frustrated a lot.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah. Sounds like our band's IT guy anyway.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I almost went for an IT job recently. I thought, no. No. To be fair, it would have been just checking different systems and being like, how can I fucking break this?
Yeah.
But I was too late. I took fucking forever to write my CV. So I was like, shit. So I decided to do the podcast again, hoping that I might get money from this. I'm joking, however, I don't expect to make a dime on this because welcome to 2020, where everyone is poor.
It's about right, anyway.
That's it.
I've completely lost my train of thought for a second there because I've been
absolutely fine. I'm sure you'll find it. Where did you lose it?
Where did you lose it? That's such a dad joke.
Don't. I do that. Whenever someone asks me, you're all right? I'm like, no, I'm all left, mate.
Hey! Classic.
I can see you coming.
I have a friend who literally just does that all day. Literally every response is a dad joke.
No. I have respect for this guy. That's a skill.
I even say shit like, you on the phone? Nah, I'm on a chair.
You're tickled by these.
Yeah, okay, keep them coming. I need more ammo.
Was it? What's up? The ceiling.
Oh, for God's sake.
This is it. Like, the rest of us will just be getting this at band practice tomorrow.
Right, no, that's enough. It's not happening. It's not happening.
The thing is, I genuinely appreciate it and I do laugh. And then there's the serious points like, I need an actual answer from you. Hello, answer, I'm dad.
Yeah. Yeah, it does reach that point.
I'm just so fucking done with dad jokes at the moment.
Means you're actually a dad as well, so
yeah,
I don't think you'll ever be done with them.
I'm entitled. I have earned my dad joke stripes.
Yeah.
I only have cats. They meow at me, and I'll just say to them, hello, meow, I'm dad. They're not as frustrated as children would be, I would think.
You're probably about right.
They do look at me angrily, though, every time I do it. So I think they kind of understand.
That's just cats,
like, their own, just their instincts telling them, for fuck's sake, just feed me.
He's doing it again.
Indeed. Mine bites me. He goes like, ah. And I'm like, what is it? He's like, feed me. All right, that's fair. Okay.
I wasn't sure if we're on about your cat or your kids.
Both. No, the cat. Just.
I found this great picture the other day of it's basically just this meme of me. I'm going to the toilet. Cat. We are going. It's just this cat going like this with his fist like that. It's just got the communist flag above it.
That's quite good.
Yeah, I wish to see this. That sounds good. My kind of humour.
I look at memes far too much, and to be honest, most of my humour derives from it now, which has suddenly, at one point in one conversation, all I had was memes, and I feel a bit pathetic now. I can't actually speak to you as a normal human being. I just have pictures describe
Yeah.
my personality.
Yeah.
If it's funny, that's all good. I think there's a lot, because there's so many different options and so many choices, you can kind of make an organic conversation out of it, right? And it can say a little bit more, because at least with a picture, it's more, you're less likely to have it taken out of context.
I never thought we'd get intellectual about memes.
Well, no, but like, if you add a picture to it, there's another dimension to it, which means you're more capable of having a conversation that is actually representing your point of view, rather than words, which are so easily misconstrued.
Yeah, but then the problem is, then you've got the age cut, which I generally find is somewhere above the age of 40, where it's like, I don't get memes. I don't like memes. I don't understand it. Why don't you just talk to me?
Shut up. Nobody talks about my age. It's not allowed.
Because there's several older friends that I have, and before I even send them memes, it's like, how do you feel about memes? Like, I won't even just send it. I will ask them genuinely, like, how do you feel about memes? Do you understand? Do you find them funny? Because I will send them. If you like them, I will send them. I shall supply you with image comedy.
Even though you're 40, you do appreciate image comedy.
I do. I appreciate a good meme, even though I am that number.
But there's always an exception. There's always an exception within a rule.
Yeah.
You're young at heart.
Also,
I'd say that's probably what it is.
Quite typically the exception within the rule as well.
Yeah.
That's one of the very few things I've learned from working on the phones for years. Never make assumptions.
No, I had that when I worked in a call center for almost 2 years. It's just, just don't make assumptions about people.
But they're allowed to make assumptions about you.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. I.e. that everything is your fault.
Oh, yeah, everything's your fault. How could you do that? This is your fault. Everything's your fault. What did I do? You breathed funny. I don't like it.
Yeah, it's good. Working in call centers it's where it's at.
No, it's pish.
No, it's fucking rubbish.
Been there, done that.
I don't miss getting death threats over the phone. I had that with the guy once. He was like, "Oh, you're lucky that you're not in Liverpool, or else you'd be dead." And I was just like,
I'm sorry, it's just the delivery of that.
He hung up, and I was like, that's not what I would do if I just threatened to kill someone and wanted them to believe it. I wouldn't then hang up.
No, indeed. Hang about.
I'm guessing you also had like all of his information, like address, everything.
Yeah,
like,
that's the good thing
about
it.
That's what I don't understand why people do that. It's like anyone that works in a call center has your personal information in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
If they wanted to hurt you, if they wanted to do something to you, they could.
Yeah.
It'd be so easily done. Most people don't think about that.
No.
Like,
No.
Why?
Or the opposite, in that they phone up, they tell you their name, and then they assume that because you know their name, you know everything about them, where they live. You know, it's like, yes, Mr. Smith.
Yeah.
I know everything about you.
It all comes down to capitalism. We believe we own stuff because we pay for it, and that becomes more important than our human interaction. No longer are we just decent to people just for the sake of being decent. As soon as you pay for something, you think you're entitled to something in return. And that includes thinking that someone on the other end of a phone is no more than what you've just paid for.
There it is, the real truth.
So, wait, you're saying the music that I'm paying on a monthly basis for on Spotify, I don't own that?
You don't own it though on Spotify, do you?
No, you don't. You don't own it in any capacity.
I think it's
a CD, you own that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Within intellectual reasoning and copyright laws.
Yeah.
Because apparently you're only supposed to be playing it on your headset, on your Walkman, on your way to work, not in front of all your friends.
Yeah, it's like, are you not meant to like lend out CDs and stuff, technically?
But isn't it stupid?
I love that though. It's like you could be sitting at home listening to a new record with your 3-month-old baby, and you just got police knocking down the door. You're breaking copyright law. Only you're meant to be listening to this. That 3 month. That it's like, but it's only my 3-month-old kid. Yeah, but the dog's listening too. That's a double offence. You're going to prison for 15 years. Says who? Lars Ulrich.
Yeah, Lars. What a guy.
Yeah.
Hero.
And he was right. That's the horrible part is he was right.
In a set, the way he went about it was altogether vastly wrong, though, right? But yeah, more or less, like I think is, well, I mean, he's right that artists should be remunerated for their work, you know. But with the music industry needs still to adapt to the modern world. That's just the reality of it.
I think it's definitely more feasible than it was 8 years ago.
You know what though? I mean, it's double-handed, isn't it, or double-edged? Because whilst it's probably harder for a small band like us to ever really make any money. You know, the other flip side of that is it's also a lot easier for us to put our music out to somebody in a completely different country or we would never meet. So it is double-edged.
Yeah, like provided you're not doing it as a business, it just almost doesn't matter.
For sure.
Like it'd be nice to get more money, but
well, look what we. I mean, putting the album out's one. So without the internet, we couldn't have done that. Not that we have,
for sure.
Because I mean, so many of our demos and stuff just got pinged back and forth. Where previously I don't even know how we would have done that. Recorded it onto a CD and then meet up at rehearsal.
We would have had to have written everything in a rehearsal space, which
totally ridiculous.
Just doesn't work for us. No. I don't know what it's like for you with your band, but for us, we just find that see if someone comes into the rehearsal room and is like, I've got a song, and they're trying to teach it to the other guitarist.
You're there for a whole 2 hours just learning that song.
Yeah, totally.
Waste of time.
And in all fairness, in my case, I have an industrial rock metal band, so we have synthesizers, all that shit. I would never be back in the fucking good old days, as Scottish national icon Frankie Boyle once said. There's no way I would have been able to fund the bands that I've currently got.
Yeah,
there's just no way. I think smaller bands have opportunities to make it and earn a living from music. I think, it's great being realistic in the sense of it's unlikely. Sure, that's perfectly fine. The way I see it, and that's probably very naive on my part, really. Specifically with the part that this is my first proper band. I think there are opportunities. I think there are ways to make a living from music. It's just there is no set way anymore like there used to be, which you get accepted by the gatekeepers, which would be radio, labels, magazines, so on and so forth. These are the people that would say, yeah, we accept you, you can make money from this if enough people buy it, blah, blah, blah. Now, it's more of a case of you don't have this huge team behind you like you used to. Now it's all on you and potentially people that you trust and whatever your method is.
Yeah, that's why you have to be smart about it, because there's basically no one there to be smart for you.
Yeah. I mean, we went on tour last summer, and that was in terms of business-wise and whatnot, that was the most profitable time we had. And we did that was all self-built, that was all self-done. You don't need a record label anymore. I think what happened in the 80s, late through 90s, up until probably the turn of the century, is there was a real kind of copycatting going on, the new metal age, grunge age, whatever you want to look at, where the next big thing, and then you've got a studio exec a label guy going, down into Seattle or to California, whatever, to say, oh look, there's a new metal group, cool, get them in, sign them up, pay for them to do an album, let's put that out, it'll do fine, they'll do one album, we'll get our money back, no bother. And that, I think, totally killed music, certainly of any outside of your sort of, we'll always sell generic pop music, really, really killed alternative music, which is part of why we are where we are now, which is there's not really a theme. You know, I guess that we went through a bit of metalcore, and deathcore was quite big for a bit, but it's bloody deathcore, man. It's hardly going to be on everybody's radar of stuff to listen to.
Yeah, for
you know?
sure.
So, sorry.
Yeah, I'd say the last big metal movement was Gent, but that, unfortunately, because it's progressive music, that's only going to appeal to so many people.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I think that Gent had the benefit of, like, for people who were into, like, you know, like your early, like, 2010s style metalcore or whatever, it was a good gateway for them into, like, what would be classed as progressive music, because it could sort of be seen as sort of somewhere between, you know, like, your metalcore and, like, your progressive metal, I suppose.
Yeah, it's not like it's full-on mad prog, is it?
Yeah, it wasn't like Dream Theater or anything, so it appealed a bit more to people who were, you know, into what was popular like before it and stuff, which I think is probably why there's only really, or why a lot of the bands that got big in the gent scene, you know, stuff like Periphery, Tesseract, all that kind of stuff, they all sound so much different than they did 10 years ago, was probably largely because of the fact that I reckon a lot of those bands realised that the sound that they were doing was something that wasn't going to be massively popular for a really long time, and they probably got tired of it themselves because of the fact that it got so popular. You heard it everywhere, you know?
Every band sounded exactly the same.
Yeah, like there was loads of, you know, like there was like 100 Peripheries, there was 100 Tesseracts and stuff, and it was like no one wanted to take the style further except for the bands that were already big in that style, I guess. You know, like all the other bands just wanted to kind of sound like the bands that had made it big, which I think is something that happens with a lot of your big scenes,
sure.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, actually, having said that with Gent, death metal seems to have been making a bit of a turn again. Like, that's suddenly getting, like, within the alternative scene at least, that's getting a lot more popular suddenly.
It's because Discarnate released the best sounding album ever last year. And they're like, it was last year, wasn't it?
I think With All Their Might was the year before.
No, it was 2019. Sure.
No, it was 2018.
Was it?
Yeah. Or 2017, possibly. One of the other.
There's definitely not.
I can't remember. But
makes me feel old. With All Their Might is the most like banging sounding album that has ever been made by anybody. It is just an absolute slab. It is phenomenal.
And like with what you were saying as well,
Whitechapel
like
as well. Sorry, Whitechapel.
Yeah, I was going to say Whitechapel. Yeah,
did a really good album.
Yeah. But like with what you were saying about how death metal is coming back, one thing that I've noticed is that death metal that sounds like old school death metal is making a big reappearance, because like bands like Gatecreeper, who blew up and stuff, they don't sound like modern death metal. They sound like the early 90s Swedish death metal, you know? Yeah. So I think
the good In Flames, early In Flames, not that re-recorded stuff.
Totally. Like I think maybe for a lot of people who, you know, like they weren't exposed to like your Entombed and all those kind of bands, you know, it was only like modern death metal that they really got into. When modern death metal bands do the old school sound, it's just kind of becoming popular again, because there's plenty of it that I've seen, like bands like Fume and Mouth and stuff and Fetid, like they all sound more like the early 90s kind of sound than, you know, like bands like Aborted and stuff, you know, or Discarnate. You know, like I'd say that either stuff like Aborted or Discarnate are probably like the quintessential sound for like modern death metal. Yeah.
Yeah, so good. One band that comes to mind is Venom Prison as an example. The message has changed with death metal as well, I think. Because, like, I know that Venom Prison has... I think with death metal, a lot of it has become very environmentalist. I think that's why it reflects so much with a lot of people, because a lot of people that do listen to that kind of music are very environmentally conscious and vegan. I can say that. I can say that confidently as a semi-vegan person.
Semi-vegan, I like it.
I'm basically vegetarian and lactose intolerant, but I still eat eggs. So I'm like,
yeah, no, that's
I'm vegetarian, but so everyone calls me vegan for some reason. It's fun. It's great. I love correcting people.
I think you're right though about death metal managing to sort of tap into the public consciousness about or being more conscientious of environmental issues or and that kind of thing. I mean, so that's a huge lyrical inspiration for me. An awful lot of what we write about it's
environmental matters.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, that's a huge amount. Pretty much 90% of my lyrics are focusing on that in one way or another, from one angle or another. I think as the traditionally most extreme kind of or angry extreme rather than black metal, which is probably
like
more
sonically extreme.
Sonically extreme, yeah, exactly. Music, it makes sense to fill it with lyrical content that's also giving people the most kind of anger, I suppose.
Yeah, like
you know,
like meaningful and what's the word? Meaningful content that is. I can't think of the word. I've forgotten how to speak English.
You're going to go like listen to a guy shout at you for an hour, right? Along with like this absolute sonic blast of music behind him. You want it to be something you're going to appreciate it more if it's something you also care about.
Oh yeah.
So I think that, like you're saying, it's in the public consciousness now, right? So that makes sense to kind of pull these things together. Maybe in the 80s, people would go and listen to bands who were singing about dragons and magic.
Yeah.
Do you know that shit?
I miss those days.
Yeah, it blows my mind that like why?
I mean, I'm a big fan of stuff like Blind Guardian.
Yeah,
so
well, there you go. I don't get it. But me, like, I just think, what cool. It's a dragon, sweet, But,
that's the point, though. Dragons are cool. That's it.
Yeah. But like, how can you write a song about a dragon? You should do You should want to write some lyrics about a dragon.
Nah, I'm
good. It's fine. See,
I'm good.
It's fine, Calum. We'll start playing D&D together. Where we can write the lyrics that way. Then Colin has to read. Then Colin just has to sing them.
No, it's not happening.
Yeah, I'm not going to complain about 80s lyrics when I'm wearing a Merciful Fate t-shirt.
I mean, each to their own, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Each to their own. I get what you were saying. Death metal. The reason that it's become environmental conscious is because the people who are right out there and really want to be projecting their anger and with their music are going to find the things that are making people angry just now. And largely, if you were to take a cross-section job, what is it, the Family Fortunes, we asked 100 people what's pissing you off just now. Survey said 95 of them said the way we're treating the planet around us and the other people around us is probably going to be quite high.
You'd hope so anyway.
Coronavirus. I reckon coronavirus. Coronavirus.
I wonder what's happened to all these game shows, because I just realised, now that you mentioned Family Fortunes...
It was a cracking show.
Did you think...
Right, Pointless was originally a joke, because of course Pointless is basically Family Fortunes, but in reverse.
Yeah.
It was a joke.
Pointless is so good,
though. Pointless is damaged. They tried it out just to see what it was like. They went, they were messing about, and then they were like, actually, you know what, this is bloody good.
Yeah.
So then it became a thing.
But that's the thing. I'm trying to think of what's actually happened to game shows during the pandemic. I don't watch TV, right? So to me, this is like, I wonder, once upon a time in this strange dark lands that I never set foot in, I wonder what they've actually done with game shows, because there's no way to can actually have them. And
they don't. Game shows died a death years ago. Since people started,
you still get stuff like The Chase and all that, which people are.
Okay.
A lot of people are.
TV.
I think because you're now got on-demand television, people are not deliberately choosing to watch a mind-numbing crap game show. Instead, they'll go and watch some actually good TV. Do you know,
Jeremy Kyle?
No, actually good TV. You'll go pick up a decent box set of something on Netflix that's actually going to engage your brain cells rather than rot them, which is what game shows do, right? And Jeremy Kyle for that matter.
To be fair, I watch Japanese cartoons. I can't really say much about that.
Good for you. Good for you. Does it rot your brain? Does it get you thinking?
It does actually get you thinking, because there is a lot of... The thing is, a lot of the stuff that I watch tends to be sort of like right and wrong, and like, oh, is this really wrong? Or is it just a different mindset and just shit like that? I won't bore you with Japanese cartoons much longer.
I don't think either of us would be particularly bored in that.
Nope.
We both unashamedly watch anime, so...
We have an intruder.
But no, I think that's the thing. Personally, that's what I find so interesting about Japanese animation in comparison to a lot of American animation. American animation, generally the adult stuff is usually just throwaway comedy gags, while in Japanese it's very much look at what cultural impact this might have, or this person's way of thinking, and this how so on and so forth. Which are
like it's probably fairly reflective of the culture, not to say anything negative about American people or anything like that. Sure. Like I think because of the fact that obviously I don't think you could. There's very few other cultures that you could take, like Japanese and American, that'd be so different from each other. So it's probably a big part of that, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
You know, like obviously not as an intentional thing.
So the vast majority of art is created from a snapshot in the culture in which it was born, right? So things that were made in the 80s, you can tell about where it was made and who made it and why.
So it's like how like loads of old cartoons and stuff are full of stuff that you wouldn't do now because you just know it's wrong.
Art imitates life.
Oh yeah.
Totally.
I think a lot. Actually, one thing that I do find very much with a lot of Japanese animation is a lot of them seem to be thought exercises in some way or form. Like there's a series that I watch quite close called My Hero Academia, and basically the setting is everyone's got a superpower to the point where it's not really anything special, and heroes are just law enforcers. However, because I start reading the actual manga at this point because the series is slow, and there's a point because everyone like doesn't just have powers; they also have like different looks. Like people look like lizards or birds and things. And there's one part where it's reflected about like creating products like shaving gels and things like that. Because for us, a lot of it is gentrified. Really, the right words? Streamlined. You have a certain set of products for certain types of people. But what would happen if your general person, everything changes, everyone's different, everyone is physically different from the other person? Like that would fuck product placement, like products and everything, completely up. That you would have to create products for each individual person. Because there's no way you can accommodate everyone. You can't simplify it. So that's one of the thought processes that I like think about, looking at it, think that's really clever. That's such a cool idea that people generally watching this wouldn't think of, or just in general.
Yeah, like I think there's definitely quite a lot of that, like where it would maybe. I think like with the fact that a lot of it's probably quite masked as well, like you don't really realize the message, but it's still kind of going in, which is always quite clever. Like when you can sort of think about something, but not even realize that, you know, where you're watching anime, that's what's making you think about it.
Yeah.
You know, I think that one thing that they do really well is sort of like character development and the way of conveying emotion and stuff. Because I don't know if you've ever seen Tokyo Ghoul, but like as far as anime goes, it's pretty deep stuff emotionally, and it's the fact that obviously like there's not much of it episode wise, but you still get so much character development in it and stuff, and I don't really get that in a lot of stuff.
It's a lot more. The anime I've found is a lot more dark and light. A lot more of a contrast and a lot starker as well. So the ups are really high and the downs are really
for sure.
So, and it can do that very, very quickly. I think it will reflect a lot on the Japanese culture, I guess when you're looking at Western equivalents, this tends to be safer, I suppose would be the and more kind of, I guess, blunter. That's what you were kind of hinting at as well, wasn't it? Like a little bit, the messages won't be quite so subtle, or there's and that means that someone like yourself who's looked at it and gone, you know, this is how I'm taking that particular part. That's okay because that's on you, you know. But who's not thinking of it on that level doesn't have to and doesn't need to because it's completely optional. Do you know? And that's a much more involving process. And I guess really, I mean, again, to sort of bring this around full circle, that's what the idea of making an album is as well. you know?
Yeah.
You can then, because there's a bigger body of work with much more ups and downs, you can then say, well, I just actually, I like these 3 songs. And that's what's going to go on my Spotify list. And that's totally fine. But for somebody else who's going to go, actually, I like the way that it goes up and down. That's great. You know,
there's a lot more of people being able to take different things from it. Basically.
Exactly that. And if you're able to, in a position to be able to create something that allows somebody else to make their own interpretation of it, then you've won. Because that's what that's the sweet.
What art is.
Yeah, but
yeah,
that's
totally.
exactly right. Because then you're purely creating what you want to create, and somebody else is purely consuming what they want to consume, and that makes it. That is the absolute.
It's like both parties get what they need out of it, essentially.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're out there making music and all you're doing is you're making something because you want that crowd of 500 people to bang their heads, and that's the reason for creating the music, that's okay, but that's not the same thing. Do you know? It's not simple. It's not a reciprocal process, which is what it should be.
Because that's the thing. If music and art, but in general, art in itself is subjective. Everyone will take it away in a different manner.
Of course.
As an artist, that's generally the ultimate goal, for someone to enjoy it and to interpret it in a way that they can reflect with it or makes them think.
Yeah.
However, as you said, this is what makes something like Spotify or Extreme, going back to the sponsor, and all the other streaming services, what makes services like that so great, as you've just said, is you can either take away, I like this song, done, to convey the emotion that they feel, or the attachment that they have to that particular work of art, or they enjoy the entire work of art as one big chunk.
Yep.
Yeah.
I can't disagree with that at all.
Yeah. Totally. And like in a similar note, like that's why one thing that I enjoy, or one thing that I appreciate rather, whenever we've played live is like it's pretty common for like if you're playing with like other local bands with people, like you'll speak to them and you'll speak about each of your band sets or whatever, and like usually it's people like you guys played great or whatever. I really enjoy it whenever someone points out something that they weren't sure on, or like
it's because
they were like, oh, I don't think you actually did this that well or whatever, because it's that they're being honest, unless the person is the total dick and just wants to tear you down, I guess. Like it's great being told stuff by people that are in other local bands, like that they enjoyed what you're doing or whatever, but it does mean a lot if someone can have the balls to say, well, actually, I wasn't a big fan of this, that, or the other thing. Like, I think you could have done this better, or, I think that does mean a lot, because you can take more away from it, I suppose.
It's exactly the way we work as a band as well, though, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
We're all able to turn around to each other and say, I don't like that. But it's without it being an insult, without it being someone getting their feelings hurt. And I think that's when you know that they're honest. That's why you feel you've become a better drummer. That's why I've become a better vocalist. Is because it takes, Drew or Sean or Calum, whoever else, to turn around and say, you know what, could you try it like this? That's so
important. Communication within a band is so important.
Beyond.
It just wouldn't work. I think if communication wasn't good within our band, because the fact that we're all realistically quite different people.
Yeah.
I think if we didn't have good communication between us, we would have all packed it in ages ago.
Yeah.
We would have gotten sick of each other probably, because we definitely are all quite different people. I'm sure that it's the same in your band. There's that definite difference in people, and just being able to communicate makes a world of difference.
It's about taking that energy that when somebody does clash and turn it into something positive. Because that's just natural to fall out. In fact, if you weren't falling out in your band, and I'll say it to anybody who's listening, if you're not falling out, there's no creativity, there's no spark. Somebody doesn't care. You're only going to fall out. Falling out's a bit extreme, but you're only going to disagree if you both really want something out of it. Do you know?
Oh, yeah,
or if you,
of course. But I think it comes down to as well how you communicate and convey your message. Because how someone might convey a message of, okay, I played this song. What do you think of it? One person might say, it's shit. What they might mean with that is, I don't particularly like the progression that you have here. I think it could be improved in that manner. However, wording is so important.
It's a humongous thing.
In regards of that. And I've experienced it. And I'm sure everyone that has been in a band or any kind of creative process has experienced that before. Musicians are sensitive creatures. We do like to whine. We like to have a whinge. We are, at points, shit communicators. However, always consider your other bandmates in some capacity.
That's because we are, when we are creating, we become vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know, because it becomes personal. If I put out, especially clean vocals is a real, like, your balls out on the table kind of thing. I've not heard your band, I'm afraid, so I don't know if you do any cleans or what.
It's very Depeche Mode, Rammstein, so I do a lot of singing. It's my screams that I'm a bit more like,
Okay, well, then maybe the other way around for you, but then you feel more vulnerable moving out of your comfort zone, right? But that's when you're creating. And I think if you put yourself out there and really actually try, and somebody else comes along and judges it, that's really can be really difficult, because it's dead easy to take that personally. So you must be able to communicate what you're saying without insulting anybody. It's something I've had to work on, because I know I'm quite a kind of, like, I say what I'm thinking without necessarily thinking about how to word it first. Yeah. And that, that's something that you get better at over time.
I think one thing that we've managed as a band, I don't really know how we've done it, is that, like, where you were saying that it's not helpful for someone to just go, I think it's shit. Yeah. What is helpful is for someone to point out what they're not sure about and sort of explain it. Yeah. As a band, we manage to do both.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10 people don't get upset about it. Sometimes people do, but because sometimes people are just a bit less thick-skinned. But usually what happens if someone doesn't like something is that they'll say, I think that's shit, but then immediately afterwards explain why.
Yeah.
So that
makes more sense, though, because you're contextualizing what you said rather than it's shit and now I have to figure out why you think it's shit. That doesn't work.
Because you've got that thing of, like, someone said it's shit, so someone's been honest. And, you're not like, well, what do they actually think about it? Like, that they actually just don't like it. Yeah. But they're being good enough to you to explain it so that you can then do something with that. Yeah. Because I think that is usually what happens. Like, if someone's just not sure on something, no one really goes, oh, I'm not sure how I feel about that, because that's usually when we have problems. If someone just goes, I think it's shit, but this is why, that's usually when we can move on in a productive way.
It's not necessarily to say that someone says something shit and then you go, okay, cool, I'll change it. That it might, well, I actually like it and this is why I think it works. And then it becomes a group conversation, where if one person's thinking, well, I'm not feeling it, but we'll give it a bit of time. And then, over time, maybe it does, everybody kind of softens to changing it a little bit to make it a little bit, I'm trying to think of specific examples.
You find a midpoint, or you vote on where it is and see if it works next time, so on and so forth. That all depends on what your general dynamic is as a group and how it
I think
works.
What we've got going for us is that it's not like we are without a leader as such. I mean, Drew does a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, and so if I guess technically he probably deserves the credit for doing most of the work, but it's not like he's also the guy who brings, here are our 12 songs for the album, guys.
This is what you need to do.
Finish. This is the bass part. These are the drums. That's not how this works. It's everybody's doing their own thing, and that's not just in terms of the music. I mean, in terms of the behind the scenes stuff as well. I'm getting into doing lyric videos. I do some of the t-shirt designs and whatnot. I know Calum manages the Instagram and whatnot. There's a lot of little bits and pieces that we're involved in. Sean, he's just filmed a behind the scenes documentary just for more content online. I think
everyone brings their own thing to the table that they're better at than everybody else, and that's fine, because it means
really
that
important.
Everybody kind of gets to play to their strengths.
Everybody's
got burnt out either.
Yeah, because everyone's getting an opportunity to be part of it, and not just in terms of part of the music, but in terms of part of the being in a band. Because being in a band is not just about let's go to rehearsals once a week, let's release an album, record an album. It's much more than that. There's a lot in it that I think a lot of people who are not in bands would have absolutely no idea about.
Yeah, and like one thing is, like, sometimes people do get burnt out because, like, especially like if we've not got things to be doing lyric videos for, or to be making documentaries about, or to be making social media posts about, and maybe say for example, like if Drew's just like he's got more to do than anybody else and he is getting a bit burnt out on it, other people will offer to take stuff on, and I think everyone does that as well. Like if I fall behind on the band's Instagram or whatever because I've just gotten busy or anything like that, then someone like Sean or whatever will pick it up
Yeah.
so that it's still going. And I think it's pretty good that we've got that in the band where people are able to speak about if they feel a bit overwhelmed by the stuff that they've got to do.
Yeah.
But like there's been plenty of times where, like, I don't know, like if Sean's had too many video-y things to do, he's gone to you and then said, I know that you can also do this kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's definitely, I think we've definitely gotten good with the communication in the band. Like, it does still slip from time to time, but I think no matter how good a relationship you have with one person or a group of people, communication does slip. But overall, I don't think we're rubbish at it.
No, I think I'd say the opposite, in fact.
Yeah.
That's great to hear, because this is something that I say in any professional setting, whether it's actually my job setting or in music. It's communication is so important. It's something that needs to be focused on. Like we started using a calendar, like Google Calendar, which we all have access to. It's like, okay, this is what's planned, this is when we have meetings, this is when we've got this, I was like, that's fantastic, and it just works so much better.
Yeah, we've got that because we probably fallen a bit behind on it, but it's obviously with everything that's going on, people are less busy. But like, we've got one where people will put in, like if like someone in the band is like could go into a gig or whatever that's out of town, they'll put that in so that we know that on that day, if we get offered something or something comes up, we just know that we can't do it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we just do that through Google Calendar as well. So yeah, we're definitely in the same boat as you, where it does make things a lot easier. And the fact that we have a private Facebook group as well as our group chat, because some stuff that's more important, you don't want it to get lost in the chat, so you just make a post about it in a private group, and having it split across the two things definitely does help.
It means that we're always able to stay in touch as well.
Yeah, totally.
We pretty much all speak to each other every day, which in days gone by you would only be doing if you were making an album or on tour. Do you know? Like if you were a band, you would be back home away writing your own stuff and doing your own thing.
Yeah, no, for sure.
It's nice, and they're not all a bunch of dickheads, which makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
It does. It really does. I mean, I've been in several bands, and the one that I'm currently in, which I hope I stay in, of course, is due to the amount of communication we have and every member in there being so cool-headed, it just works in the sense of it's not difficult communicating, it's not difficult conveying something. One thing that we had with the guitarist, because he's the newest member in the band, is we needed to go over tones, but then the pandemic happened, which was like, shit, how do we do this?
Yeah.
So I'd have like little meetings with him saying, okay, what do we do? This tone, okay. Do a bit more of this, within our ability. And he'd send like things for demos. I'd say, could you? And I'm very careful of how I try and word things to people. Because no, just tell me it's shit. It's fine. Just tell me it's shit and why it's shit. I'm like, are you sure? Like, are you sure you want me to speak to you like that? Yeah, no, I'm fine with that. Okay, if that's what you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like for some people it is just blunt and straight to the point is what they need, whereas for some people it's the last thing they need, Yeah,
that's about paying attention to other people. That's just a general human understanding, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
You'd think that would be general human understanding. But,
well, yeah, some people certainly don't bear it in mind.
Because a lot of people don't give a shit. They just don't give a shit about the people. All they care about is themselves, and that is not what we have, and certainly that's not what we're about. Yes, we have fallouts regularly, but we all care about each other, and that's a massive, massive difference.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, people not giving a shit about each other is another nice theme throughout the.
Yeah, that is another thing that comes up quite a lot. Yeah,
it's just why do we not care about each other?
Because we're selfish, sadistic creatures.
Well, not always been though.
No, we haven't.
I mean, our very species is about working together. That's what we're supposed to do.
It's all down to precognitive conditioning.
No, you're going to
that's
engage.
A big word. My big boy words. I've done my big boy words for the week.
Is that you?
I get a biscuit.
Is that your quota filled? Is it?
Yeah, that's my quota filled. I get a curry tonight now. Great. I get a beer. Yeah, I get a beer from Dad's cupboard.
Pretty good thing to get for filling your quota, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. If I got a beer every time I filled my big word quota, how many would I have by the end of the album?
You have a beer by the end of every sentence.
Hey! But many of them on the album. I do like a good big word.
Yeah, you can just hear him going from the start of the record to the end, and he starts to slur more and more. To the point where you can't understand anything anymore. It's just noises.
That's probably actually largely what happened as well.
Probably, yeah.
This would explain a lot.
But yeah, no, we are conditioned in many ways from environment and culture and so on and so forth.
Culturally, specifically, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, everything is so heavily commoditized now that there is a real disconnect between who we are and what we create.
Mm-hmm.
And to be, it's a shite state of affairs.
We've turned this very bleak in a very, very short amount of time.
So things usually go with our band in general. Like,
Indeed. Tends to be largely. I don't know. A lot of what lyrically what I put on the album is fairly bleak and negative, but it's not.
With a glimmer of hope
hidden
in there.
I really try to make sure I keep that glimmer of hope in there because I do believe that there is a chance for redemption. That's what Just Turn Back is, for example. Just Turn Back doesn't say it's fucked. Just Turn Back says
it's almost fucked.
Yeah, but
it can be
we can
unturned.
turn around. We can turn around. You know, Reborn. It's another one. You know,
Is
it's
that
not.
Gonna be the title for the next record. Was it Connection Lost 2, The Unfucking?
Maybe.
I can get behind that.
It's a band from up here called Razor Sharp Death Blizzard who just released an album called The World Is Fucked. And it's great. It's a great album. Check it out, by the way.
It's not an incorrect title either.
No, it's not. But it's a great album. They're a bunch of angry guys. Like.
Yeah, very angry guys. Great live band.
Yeah, great live band, great grooves.
Fantastic. So, we are almost at the 2-hour site. So, if you guys have any other messages or anything that you want to chuck in, do so in a second, as we're going back to our wonderful, amazing sponsor, Extreme. What is Extreme? Extreme is powered by, yes, do the X. Extreme is powered by Bandcamp. What is Extreme exactly? It is a streaming service similar to Spotify, Apple Music, and Deezer. However, the very, very lovely point of that is the artist gets paid more, meaning artists can actually get paid for their music. How weird, right?
Bizarre concept.
But yes, the artists of Extreme actually do get paid, rather than having to tour until they get all skinny and turn into skeletons, just fall to the ground because they've all been eating our noodles for the last 2 weeks. Just you can stop you can stop touring band malnourishment by subscribing.
So their advert should really now consist of one of those like sympathy aid adverts about touring bands starving to death.
This is supposed to be the fun show.
Bands have been touring for 5 years. They have barely eaten. Let them come home. Let them. If any of the guys from Extreme are watching this, I'll accept 20%. There you go.
But that's the thing. Yeah, this is what we'll do. We'll do like a black and white. We'll do a black and white sort of film. I'm just walking along in this really deserted, like little town centre where everything's closed down. Then there's you just with your shirt off.
Starve it. Oh, just lobbing my microphone behind me. I've not even got the strength to carry it.
No, you're not just starving. You've got like a little you know, them little sheet cheeses, them little cheese sheets that you put on a burger. You start eating that, and this is Colin. This is all he's eaten all week.
One stream a day will stop Colin from having to eat pot noodles for every meal.
Indeed. Then we can go to like a other shot of me bouncing about on stage.
But it won't even be the branded pot noodle. It'll be the really cheap off-brand from the pound shop.
Nasty.
Oh. But yeah, that is the sponsor part done. Is there anything that you guys wanted to throw in to the end of the stream?
I think we've probably talked about everything.
Yeah, I can't think of anything else.
So I guess, you know, we would implore anybody listening to check out our album. We're really, really super proud of it. It's got probably a bit of everything or something for everyone on it. And plenty ebb and flow, plenty feeling. And yeah, we're super proud of it. So please check it out. Listen all the way through as well, because there's a good chance that it's going to be Tune for the Torn, the second last song, that's going to make you go, yes, that's what I'm about, you know, or it's going to be the breakdown in Reborn, which is halfway in the middle of it. You know, there's we've tried a lot. We tried to push ourselves. We all have improved as musicians tremendously doing it. So we would, implore anybody to check out the main, the title track, Connection Lost, has also got a video out on YouTube just now.
And where can you find Connection Lost?
You can get it on our Big Cartel. If you Google search Big Cartel and Catalysis, that will come up. You can also get it on Bandcamp, and you can stream it on all your usual places, so iTunes and Spotify, Deezer, and I believe Drew is looking into this extreme.
I think so.
This is a discussion that has been had, so I believe that this is.
So what you can do is you can listen to it on Extreme. Then once you're done listening to it on Extreme, if it is available on Extreme, is you can torrent it on Napster and give it to all of your friends.
No, don't do that. No,
don't. Backpedal.exe.
The thing is, right, like, we're not going to make a huge amount of money out of music sales. It's not going to happen. What we will do is we'll go out, we'll play some gigs, and we'll sell you a T-shirt. Buy a T-shirt.
Yeah.
Buy a T-shirt so they can do Coke, tits, and beer. No, that doesn't happen anymore.
No, I think that's an 80s stereotype, isn't it?
Yeah.
Nowadays, we like to eat tofu.
Eat tofu, drink almond milk, and pet cats.
Exactly.
I'll say you're not far off, to be honest.
That is the hipster death metal band that we are probably not.
No.
Thank you so much, guys, for coming on. This was Catalysis on the 11th episode of the Mesmerise podcast.